programs for a Fortune 500 company.
I can run a successful business.
I can manage your home improvements.
I can publicize your message.
I can motivate your audience.
I can put my military experience to work for your company.
I can teach your children.
I can boost your bottom line.
I can add value to your workplace.
I could be a loyal and productive employee.
But I can't put my skills to work for your organization
if I'm not given the opportunity.
If you don't recognize my talents and ability.
If you don't hire me.
If you don't have an open mind and a workplace that's open to everyone.
If you don't realize that America works best when everybody works.
What can you do?
What can you do?
What can you do?
You can remember that it worked.
It's what people can do.
It's what people can do that matters.
Nearly 50 million Americans have disabilities. Capitalize on their talents with employment practices that benefit everyone. Learn more at whatcanyoudocampaign.org.
Spring into Service One Federal Credit Union for a great loan rate. If you've been dreaming of a new ride, stop in and let one of our knowledgeable team members help you to determine the value of your trade-in, estimate your payments, and get you pre-approved. If you spent the winter dreaming of an RV or sailing into the sunset on a new boat, Service One can help you with great low rates on recreational vehicles. Stop into Service One Federal Credit Union, and we'll help put winter in the rear-view mirror. Visit us at 1075 East Sherman Boulevard or at 1625 East Wind Drive just south of the Lakes Mall. Service One FCU.
America had just gone to war when Felipe Adams volunteered.
I knew what I was signing up for. I knew the consequences. I took a bullet to the side and left me paralyzed.
For Armando de la Rosa, the Navy was a chance to serve and see the world.
I got medically discharged in 2001.
Armando and Felipe were brought together by a unique organization that serves our paralyzed veterans.
If there was no PVA, it'd be a lot of confusion. Our training is to better the veteran. We help out with the auto grant, special housing adaptation grant, education, prosthetics. Our main focus is spinal cord injury and disease, but we see anybody.
First thing he had asked me before he even asked my name was I being taken care of as a veteran? And I thought that was pretty good.
Changing lives, building futures. That's Paralyzed Veterans of America. To learn more, visit pva.org.
We've got all these credit card bills. We've got to find a way to get out from under this debt.
The National Foundation for Credit Counseling is a nonprofit organization that has been helping people for 60 years. Speak with a counselor at 800-388-2227 or visit debtadvice.org. This is a public service campaign for the NFCC.
Or you decide.
Dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
And good morning, Muskegon. And happy Earth Day to all of you folks out there. All get your tree hugging going. And let's all celebrate really the most important government religious holiday of the year, which, of course, is Earth Day. This is EyeOnMuskegon, and I'm Jim Riley here in Muskegon's Clear Channel Studios with my friend and engineer, that legendary Oscar Osbo, and helping us out this morning, attorney and professor Andrew Fink. Good morning,
Jim.
Happy Hug-a-Tree Day, Andy. You've been back from Colorado because you had a little medical emergency with family, and that's worked out okay?
It did, yes. My daughter and granddaughter were in a serious auto accident. My granddaughter had her skull fractured and some fractured ribs, but she's recovered nicely.
Okay, good. Well, glad to hear that, and glad to have you back here in beautiful Muskegon. As
I think it's the camera beeping is what that is.
That could be. We got a little beeping going on, but we'll survive. As always, it's funny. I say that we are Muskegon County's #1 rated political talk radio show, which of course is very true. But we found out when the Arbitron numbers came out recently, and we are the #1 radio show of any type in our time slot in Muskegon County. So good for us. Thank you, wonderful listeners out there, and of course many of the folks out there listen to us on the EyeOnMuskegon.com website with the YouTube links. And Oscar is really great because he's playing with the cameras right now, but he videos our show live and then plays it on TV 38 on Comcast. on Monday nights. And the Comcast channel is channel 397 from 8 o'clock to 9:30. So we are number one in our time slot, and we're all excited about that. One of the things that I like to do, this is my new little shtick, but I like to come up with a quote from a famous American, and Benjamin Franklin certainly is a famous American, and I found this to be an interesting quote. He said, "I am for doing good to the poor, but I differ in opinion of the means. I think the best way of doing good to the poor is not making them easy in poverty, but leading or driving them out of it. In my youth, I traveled much, and I observed in different countries that the more public provisions were made for the poor, the less they provided for themselves, and of course became poorer. And on the contrary, the less was done for them, the more they did for themselves and became richer." And I don't think that Mr. Franklin was suggesting that we do nothing for the poor, but I do think that he was aware that people can slide into a situation if government provides too much.
It's interesting that while technology has changed our lives incredibly, the character of the human animal has not changed, and we have the same argument today that he was having back then.
Exactly, and it wasn't that many years ago, maybe 20-some years ago, probably not even that Governor Engler made it much tougher to be on welfare, to collect welfare, and there were all sorts of predictions of terrible disaster and people starving and children dying and things of that sort. And what happened was that the state of Michigan, who was in a very serious depression really at that time, came out of it wonderfully, and people found that they did have the tools within themselves to make their lives better. So anyway, that's just my little Benjamin Franklin comment. And as always, we do want to have you on this radio show. We'd like to have you call in. We don't get that many calls, but we certainly do encourage it. Our number is 231-830-3109, and you are most welcome to give us a call anytime. And that's what this show, Eye on Muskegon, is all about. We want to get people involved, whether it's via a phone call or whether you want to suggest somebody else listen to the show. But there is value in the citizenry of our county.
I would think that if a citizen out there finds you annoying, that would be the phone call you'd want to get, so you could have a good conversation with
We
them.
don't have that much time.
Well, Oscar, I would look at it from a different standpoint. I would suggest that since nobody does find me annoying, that's why we're not getting calls.
Okay,
but perhaps
you know what it is. Oh, okay.
Perhaps I'm misguided in that conclusion. But but yes, if you are unhappy with the show, because most everybody here in the room here is relatively happy with the show. So if you're not happy, that's really the kind of information that we would like to hear on the air. Just to keep it clean, folks. One other thing, we talk about trying to broaden the show. We focused quite a bit on the county government, and we do talk about many other things on the show. But our intent here is to do a little investigative journalism on virtually all of the governmental bodies within Muskegon County, and that would be the cities and the townships and the library board and the planning commissions, and you name it. If you have firsthand knowledge of anything, please give us a call. You can either call into the show when we're on the air. You can go to the EyeOnMuskegon.com blog, and the email address is there and the phone number there, which I'll give you the phone number where you can contact me directly at home. You typically will go to a recording machine, but I'll get back with you, and that is 231-421-4409. And that information's, again, at the Eye on Muskegon blog. But if you have information about what's going on in the community, give us a call. Because I'm getting some calls from people about, believe it or not, sexual harassment in some of our governmental bodies. And I know that the county of Muskegon settled a federal sexual harassment suit a few years back. We're going to be taking advantage of the Freedom of Information Act to look into that a little more deeply, find out what was involved, and bring that to you. But I'm hearing that there may be some of these cases at the city and township level too. So if you know of any, please get in touch with us. And again, if you know of any other important information, we want to bring it to the public, because truly an informed populace, an informed county filled with people who know what's going on is certainly going to be a far more helpful county when it comes to communicating our ideas to the electeds who ultimately make the decisions and spend all the money. 9 o'clock hour, as I started off the day, this is Earth Day. A day that is really a sacred day to some, and a day of a little less sacredness to others. But in our 9 o'clock hour, we will have a guest who's been a frequent contributor to this show, another expert from the Mackinac Center, gentleman Jack Spencer, who will bring his power of investigative journalism to the show. And actually, he's the gentleman also who led the charge on that SEIU union ripoff of the home health care and home daycare providers. So he'll bring us an update on that, too. But some of the hot topics, I do want to just, one final thing. Carmen's Cafe will be there on Tuesday. This coming Tuesday from 2 o'clock to 3:15. Actually, more folks have been stopping in on that day. So it's a good opportunity to talk about specific issues. And on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the full board of the Muskegon County Commission will be meeting at the county building on the 4th floor. And apparently, there's a group of folks who have a great interest in the negotiations and the discussions about the jail will be there. And I think it's wonderful to see that kind of turnout. Hopefully we'll have that kind of turnout, and we'll see just what's going on. Because at this point, the county commissioners seem to be full throttle ahead on their drive to build a brand new 600-bed jail and do it as much in the shadows as they can. But there is an 11-member citizens board that will be announced at that meeting. Also, I have applied to be on that board. I've even, after not hearing anything from my county commissioner, in my case, I live in Norton Shores, and my county commissioner is Bob Skolnick, and I even sent him an email requesting that if he needed more information, please get with me, and I would at least appreciate a response for my request to be on the committee. And as of yet, haven't heard anything from him, so hopefully we'll hear before next week. We'll keep you updated on that. But we were talking about hot topics, and I did mention that we were interested in looking at or utilizing the Freedom of Information Act to look into some of the rumors or at least some of the news suggestions that we've heard from. And this past week, I was able to, with the help of some attorneys here, file a Freedom of Information Act request. Actually, that was a couple weeks ago. But we filed suit against the county for violations of the Freedom of Information Act and the Public Meetings Act. And Andy, Professor Fink, you were very helpful in providing guidance on this. And David Wells, who's not with us today, but who is running for judge, he is the attorney of record who provided all the information for us to file this lawsuit against the county for essentially keeping the information, very simple information, from the public. And this is about the Brookhaven situation. We may very well have to file another Freedom of Information request on the jail. But Andy, maybe you can just talk a little bit about some of the discussions that we had and how we ended up having to file suit against the county of Muskegon.
Well, yes, a little background. The state statutes give citizens a right to review virtually anything in the public files, any public document, with some exceptions, for example, strategy and lawsuits and things of that nature. And they require that all meetings of a public body be open, with certain exceptions, such as discussing settlements of a lawsuit or a strategy in a lawsuit, purchasing of real estate. And
that's during the negotiations. That information at some point would be public, available to the public, would it not?
Not necessarily,
okay.
Because the results of a meeting would be public. They can't vote. They can't vote in these closed meetings. They can only discuss.
Okay, and what we're suggesting, we'll go right ahead since you were a guiding light here.
So they went into a closed meeting to discuss litigation strategy, as I believe was what the minutes of the commission said. But we learned that after they went into the closed meeting, they also discussed this loan to Brookhaven. And so you and I and Mr. Wells were just asking them, what happened? What's going on? What did you do? And we got the advice we got back, or the answer we got back, was simply, well, there's another exception to the open meetings law, and that is receiving legal advice. And they don't have to give us the documents if it was part of legal advice.
All right, so let me make this clearer to the folks who are listening in. We asked, you guys had a closed meeting and apparently made some decisions, and then after the closed meeting came out and made a vote. We requested the information that was presented to the county commissioners that they used in making the vote, and this is the vote to make the $2.35 million loan to Brookhaven. And the county responded by saying, well, since we declared it a closed session, and since the rules tell us that we don't have to disclose anything in a closed session, therefore we're not going to respond to you. Did I get that sort of right?
I think that's correct. And what bothers me about this is they didn't explain to us, look, this is why we have to keep this secret, and give us a general, broad outline, because then you might have gone away if they had given you a good reason.
Absolutely.
Not the specifics.
Well, we were not asking, all we wanted to see, the county commissioners were presented with some information. It wasn't super secret information, I don't think.
But their answer to us has been, we don't have to give it to you.
But do I understand that they went in there for one thing and then talked about more than one thing, though?
Excellent observation.
Absolutely correct.
Andy,
absolutely correct. I've not gone into all of the case law on this and such, but it strikes me that that's probably improper, because I think that the minutes of the meeting that you go into closed session from, the minutes of the open meeting have to say why you've gone into closed session. And if you do something else in that closed session, it kind of obviates the need to state why you're going into closed session.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and that really that's a really good point, Oscar, because it sounds kind of simple, but it really isn't, because the violations were kind of on a multiple level on the closed session, and it's a tactic that the county has been using for years, at least in the 3 years that I have been attending these county commission meetings, to essentially shut down the information flow to the citizens.
And here's the part about it that bothers me. To me, it's not enough that they don't have to give it to us. The question is whether they should. And even if the law gives them an out, it doesn't mean that they should keep it secret from their citizens, from their constituents. And unless there's a good reason to keep it a secret, they ought to disclose it, even if the law permits them to keep it secret.
Well, actually, that's a great point, because you would think that they would be proud of all what they tell us is all their hard work and their deep deliberations and their angsting over doing the right thing and whatever. But you would think that they would say, look, here's what we looked at, and here's how we made our decision, and here's why we made our decision. But instead, their response is, we called a closed session, and you can't get any information out of the closed session.
Now, I believe that
easy for you to say.
Yeah, the music bumped it out of his mind, I think. Roger Miller bumped you.
Yeah, the information, we were told the information they got dealt with the ratings that the auditor would give us, or the qualifications or the statements the auditor would have to make if we didn't give this loan to Brookhaven. That's not legal advice.
Okay.
That's factual advice.
But that's a really good point. And since we do have Roger warbling in the background, we'll go to break, and we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about this lawsuit and lots of your tax dollars, folks, being sent someplace.
Dave Ramsey here. It's time to tighten up that budget. We're proud to partner with our amazing friends at Macatawa Bank because they care about helping you accomplish your total money makeover. Stop in any one of their 26 West Michigan branches where you can sit down with a Macatawa representative and review your budget. Afterwards, they'll give you a copy of my Total Money Makeover book free and a chance to win 2 tickets to our live event on May 5th. Macatawa Bank. Talk about a bank that cares about your financial well-being.
If you love food
and your heart, go grocery shopping with me, Mon, short for mono unsaturated fat.
And me, polyunsaturated.
We're the Better Fat Sisters. Over here in the cooking oil aisle, choose canola, olive, and other vegetable oils. Liquids are better for your heart than solid fats.
You'll also find us in fresh foods like avocados, nuts, and fish.
Before you put any baked goods, packaged, and prepared foods in your cart, read the labels.
Avoid our bad fats brothers, saturated and trans. They love to clog your arteries.
We're heart healthier, but let's face it, we're fats.
We all have the same 9 calories per gram, so watch your portions.
And thanks for shopping with us.
The Better Fat Sisters. Be kinder to your heart. Learn more and get recipes at heart.org/facethefats. Nationally sponsored by Canola Info.
I see this ad on TV. I call, they told me to stop paying my bills, stop talking to my creditors. They'd take care of everything.
I gave them thousands, but most of it went to their fees.
Getting out of debt isn't easy. Talk to your creditors directly or visit debtadvice.org. Real solutions for real people. This has been a public service message.
24,000 children die every day from preventable causes. My name is Lawrence Fishburne, and I believe that number should be 0. Believe in 0.
Join the effort. Visit UNICEFUSA.org.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
We are back at EyeOnMuskegon with the incredible and very techno-interested at this point, Oscar Osbo, and Professor Andy Fink. And we're talking about a very interesting event here in Muskegon because, Andy, I'll tell you, when I went to file the Freedom of Information Act itself, there's a special or at least the suit against the county for violations of the Freedom of Information Act and the Public Meetings Act. The good folks up at the county building had a hard time finding the particular code for that, and the reason is that there are so few of these lawsuits filed. Actually, it can be quite expensive to do this, and we deliberated very heavily and very seriously in our belief to make sure that we had a case that we could win, because we didn't want to spend, which may very well be $1,000. And if you think about it, Andy, just because they can keep it from us, is that the reason to do it? Is that the reason to force a citizen to come up with $500 to $1,000 in order to file a case of this sort?
No, the reason they keep it secret is because they don't want us to know about it.
Well, there we go. That seems somewhat logical, does it not?
Simple.
The law is the excuse that they use to avoid giving it to us. The exceptions to the law, actually.
Okay, and of course, when it'd be one thing if they were talking about the cost of the shrimp at their last little gala, or the cost of the where the muffins, $20 muffins, but we're talking about $2.35 million. That interestingly was, according to at least the little bit of information we've been able to get since, the $2.3 million is in fact a loan to the Brookhaven nursing home, but the Brookhaven Health Care Center, or whatever, Brookhaven anyway, it gets a subsidy from the county of anywhere from in the low hundreds to sometimes, I think in 1 year it was up in the $800,000-$900,000 a year. So in other words, it is not capable of paying its current bills without subsidy. So it's ludicrous to assume that it would be capable of paying back a $2.35 million loan, unless, as you suggested, that maybe there is a perfectly logical reason that we would all understand and support. But they don't seem to be interested in conveying that logical reason that we would all support to the public.
And my hunch is that the information that they use for their logic, for their decision, was not protected under the Freedom of Information Act, except through the back door. Just imagine, you talked about the shrimp for dinner. Just imagine if they had the restaurant send the bill to the attorney. And then in a closed session, the attorney said, here's the bill for your shrimp at dinner. Well, is that legal advice? Is that something that ought to be protected from the public just because the attorney's fingerprints are on it? I don't think so.
Is that kind of the way you view their response then? Just the fact
that's kind of the way I view the discussion about what the auditors were saying.
Okay.
Why don't they give you the stuff from the auditors or the discussion about the auditors? Because it went through the attorney's hands is the only logical reason I can think of.
Okay.
Unless they're just lying to us altogether, and I don't think they are.
Well, we're going to find out. We will be pursuing this. We will let you know. We are, as I've mentioned before, we do appreciate and accept financial support for this show because we are spending money at a lot of different levels. And if you are so inclined to support our endeavors, certainly give us a call. Well, there's another issue out there, and these are all kind of tied in, and that is the hopes of the county leadership to build a brand new jail of, according to them, between 500 and 600 beds. Current jail being around 600 or 300 beds, so essentially a doubling of the size of the jail. Apparently, there's a view at the county level that we need 300 more people in jail. And this is going to be an extraordinarily expensive venture if it goes through. As I mentioned on Tuesday, there will be a group of folks, I certainly will be there, who will be going to the county commission full board meeting, and there will be some discussion of the jail. But there also will be the announcement of these 11 citizen members of the jail committee, which, from my understanding and from published reports, are not really to provide input as to the jail, but to be public promoters and supporters of this jail concept. So if the jail is to be built, and I'm hearing $35 million range, who's to say it might be larger than that, but if the jail is to be built, the county in some way has to come up with money to do it, and that would mean it would have to float bonds, and that may be one of the reasons why this little jigamaroo happened with Brookhaven, because apparently the auditors didn't like it, and they cobbled together some last-minute deal, and it was certainly last minute. So it may all combine together in something that we hope to expose and bring to the public, and hopefully our county commissioners, they are compensated, by the way. These gentlemen and lady do not do this for free. The total cost of the by the taxpayer of each county commissioner, not including their free iPads that they just bought themselves, is about $40,000 per year in terms of the pay that they get and then the benefits. They get health benefits and pension and things of that sort. So it seems to me that they would be very interested in producing facts that would make us support them, but that doesn't appear to be the case. Hey, we're going to come back after the break, and we're going to talk about Earth Day. And the Mackinac Center's Jack Spencer will be there to help focus our thoughts on this wonderful government holiday, a joyous holiday. So we will be right back.
Oh, don't you love me sometime?
When you need the latest hits by country's hottest stars, come up the dial to 107.9 FM.
I love it!
Check us out online at 107mus.com.
The best country station out there right now.
The Lakeshore's country is 107MUS The Moose.
Double O Audio and Video offer a unique blend of services with life stories, memorials, documentaries, along with HD commercials and video editing, music video, all with some of the best prices offered and years of experience on top. Also, Double O Audio and Video offer video transfers, 8mm, Super 8, VHS, VHC, slides, all formats transferred to high-quality DVD. Double O Audio and Video. Go on the website at oo-video.com. Double O Audio and Video.
Spring into Service One Federal Credit Union for a great loan rate. If you've been dreaming of a new ride, stop in and let one of our knowledgeable team members help you to determine the value of your trade-in, estimate your payments, and get you pre-approved. If you spent the winter dreaming of an RV or sailing into the sunset on a new boat, Service One can help you with great low rates on recreational vehicles. Stop into Service One Federal Credit Union, and we'll help put winter in the rear-view mirror. Visit us at 1075 East Sherman Boulevard or at 1625 East Wind Drive, just south of the Lakes Mall. Service One FCU is federally insured by the NCUA.
Holland Hydroponic Outlet has it all. Complete light systems, hydroponics, ventilation, nutrients, and soil. In Holland, Grand Haven, and South Haven. Check out Torched Glass Art Studio next to the Holland store, creating one-of-a-kind glass pipes.
It's your car. You take it to people you trust.
Don't rebuild or what? Rip out your leg.
It's your finances. You want to go to the experts.
Cut your payments by 50%.
We've got to find a way to get out from under this debt. We can help.
The National Foundation for Credit Counseling is a nonprofit organization that has been helping people for 60 years. Speak with a counselor today at 800-388-2227 or visit debtadvice.org. This is a public service campaign for the NFCC.
The Talk of Muskegon is News Talk 1090, WKBC Muskegon, and heard 24 hours a day on WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
Sirens, jet engines, car horns, leaf blowers. Today's world puts our sense of hearing on overload. Luckily, there are places we can go to refocus our senses. Our national wildlife refuges. It's amazing how much more you'll hear when you just take a minute to listen. Like a stirring chorus of songbirds warbling in the treetops. Or the industrious beaver slapping its tail in the mountain pond over baritone bullfrogs. Or the pulsating beat of a pileated woodpecker looking for a meal. When you hear these things, you're hearing the world the way we found it. With over 500 refuges across America, you don't have to go far to make a special connection with nature. Learn more at fws.gov/refuges. That's fws.gov/refuges.
The Exquisite Corpse. Very unusual and completely amazing story pieced together out of so many parts that it is not possible to describe them all here, so go ahead and just start reading. The full moon lights the silver rails winding around dark mountains and over steep gorges of jagged rock and one freezing cold, rushing black mountain river. I wish there was enough time to describe all of the funny twists and turns, especially the elephant clown party, that led up to now, but there isn't enough time, because there is a ticking clock, and the two passengers we care most about don't know anything about it. In a sleeping berth in the third car from the end of the train are two children, 11-year-old twins who have just run away from the circus. The girl's name is Nancy, the boy's name is Joe. They have no idea that those are not their true names, though they will figure it out soon enough. To see what happens next, visit read.gov to read The Exquisite Corpse, a riveting adventure pieced together by John Shuska, Shannon Hale, Daniel Handler, and other popular authors. Explore new worlds. Read. This exciting message is brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
Wow, this place is so adorable. I can't believe we haven't stopped in sooner. Yeah, it's really cute. Betsy, look at these sweaters. 2 for $75, and they look amazing on our girls. Maybe they would. I'm not sure if it's the right size. Oh, come on. You know they're perfect. What's wrong?
Suzanne, I have no business being in the store. I should not be shopping. Things are really tight right now.
Tight? Are you and Michael having trouble?
We're behind on our mortgage, and Michael is really worried.
Listen, Bill and I had the same problem a few months ago, and we got some really great counseling, and it was free. I'm going to email you the information as soon as we get home.
Suzanne, you're the best.
If you even think you may be in danger of foreclosure, call the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. Certified housing counselors can help you work through your problems, and the service is free. Call the NFCC at 866-687-6322 or visit mortgagehelpnow.org. That's mortgagehelpnow.org. This has been a public service from the NFCC.
This is Mike McCready. You probably know me as one of the founding members of the rock band Pearl Jam and the band's lead guitarist. For the last 24 years, I've been living with Crohn's disease, a chronic and often painful digestive disease. Luckily, I have my disease under control. But so many of the 1.4 million Americans living with Crohn's and a similar disease called ulcerative colitis live day to day not knowing when their disease will strike next. The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation is committed to transforming the lives of those impacted by Crohn's and colitis toward a future based on well-funded, cutting-edge research. You can help by joining one of CCFA's 130 Take Steps walks taking place around the country this year. Make the decision now to join us and take a step toward a future free from Crohn's and colitis. Sign up today at www.cctakesteps.org. That's cctakesteps.org. Take a step. Register today.
WKBZ.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
And happy Earth Day to all of you huggers of trees and gerbils and newts and salamanders and funky grasses, and in particular the newly planted rice up in Whitehall that is apparently the reason we're going to have a swan slaughter soon. So that
I heard Al Gore wasn't going to use his plane today because of
well, great segue. Yeah, Al Gore is going to celebrate by keeping one of his fleet on the ground. We have with us Professor Andy Fink, attorney and educator Andy Fink, Oscar Osbo, of course, myself, I'm Jim Riley, and we have on the phone from the Mackinac Center, Jack Spencer. Good morning, and just I'd love to give you a hug there, Jack, but you can't. I can't. How you doing?
Pretty good. Happy Earth Day to you, by the way.
Thank you so much. It's very meaningful to get that kind of sentiment from somebody who's an employee of the Mackinac Center. Before I jump into Jack's expertise on this, I would like to just ask a little quiz here, Oscar. Got to jump on this one here. What did the commentators all have in common? Quote, will billions die from global warming, end quote. The price of gas is $6 a gallon to discourage guzzling. A lot of big ideas and innovations coming out of Europe. Quote, how long will it take to fix the mess we've made? Will the Earth miss us at all? How long would it take for it to fix the problems we created? Here's another one. If this worst-case scenario should occur in the coming centuries, New York could be abandoned, its famous landmarks lost to the sea, and on and on and on. There's many wonderful comments by expert folks. Anybody got a sense of what they all have in common?
What they all have in common?
Well, all these
idiocy.
Folks. Well, there we go. Well, let me give you one. Give you one other one. Not doing it. And the reference here is fighting global warming. Will be catastrophic. Will be 8 degrees hotter in 10, not 10, but 30 or 40 years, and basically none of the crops will grow. Most of the people will have died, and the rest of us will be cannibals.
This isn't all Al Gore stuff, or no?
No, actually, that particular one was Ted Turner. What they all have in common is they are all comments, and I've got 25 of them. They are all comments about the imminent demise of the Earth by folks who are in the what I suppose would be called the one percenters, by extraordinarily wealthy Americans, many of whom are in the media. Obviously, Ted Turner is in the media, and others has been in the media. But these are the one percenters who are telling us, heartfelt, that the Earth is in dire need of help, and the rest of us need to not only pay money, but to curtail our lifestyles. And yet every one of them's got a private jet. Every one of them has multiple houses and then multiple wives in many cases, multiple families.
Probably watch a lot of Mad Max when they can.
Well, perhaps they are. They're probably no longer fans of Mel Gibson since he's on the outs. But
he's ranting. He's raving.
There we go. But here we have our betters, by their own definition. Our betters are coming up with very convincing predictions of apocalypse in the future, and yet these are the folks that are keeping the private jet and the private yacht businesses afloat. So I don't know, Jack. I'll give it to you from there.
Well, it's an example of the human condition. I mean, the original Earth Day, which I think was in 1970. Was about pollution and some other things, and actually we made some improvements that first decade and a half afterward, some fairly sensible things. But of course, human beings, being what they are, politics took it over. The opportunity to make a lot of money out of distorting things took it over. And when you said those comments all had one common theme, my thought was maybe they were from old movie scripts.
Right. That's what it sounded like.
But really, sincerely,
good point.
What happened is exactly this. They say if you're going to write a movie, if you're going to write a book, a fiction, etc., make the topic huge and have the Earth in the balance. Or if you're going to write about World War II, make it about some topic that you claim in the novel would have switched who won that war. Something big. Make it about something big. And that's what happened with the environmentalists, in my opinion. I think about 15 years in, they'd done a lot of good stuff, and then they started saying, look, we've got to keep the money rolling in, we've got to keep the checks going, so now we've got to change the script, and we've got to start hollering that the world's survival's in the balance, because if we keep improving things the way we have been, nobody's going to pay attention to us anymore.
Well, that's true, and that's why so many people, certainly the young children who were forced-fed Al Gore's movie "An Inconvenient Truth," anybody who saw that in a vacuum of opposing views would come out and, certainly tears on their eyes with all the drowning polar bears are so cute and fuzzy and all.
Let me ask you about that, too.
Computer-animated ones.
Yeah.
Well,
but let me ask you about that. What do you think about this? Because, I know I got hopefully I have another 30 years left in my life, and that makes me think a lot about what am I going to be running into in the next 30 years, technology and everything that's happening. Kids today, what could they possibly be thinking with all this stuff that's getting force-fed down their throats? But they're all going to die.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you, I think it was more than Gore's movie. I think it started in the schools. I think we have an entire generation, and you can't blame them too much, because the schools started pointing them in the direction that if, for instance, if a beaver made a dam and created a lake, well, that was nature, and that was okay. If a human being did the exact same thing, somehow it was bad. And I think there's very little that they can do about it except have the experiences and so on to see around it. But we kind of, as a generation, allowed it to happen to our kids, and it's very difficult to untangle those things when you have that original mindset that, frankly, has been taught you at the beginning of age 4.
Well, we're finding out now that much of, I guess maybe we'll focus on global warming at this point, because that's the most powerful argument, and certainly it's the argument that's successfully been used to spend money here in West Michigan on research for batteries for electric cars. And windmills, and now there's a talk of what they call a public-private partnership, which means entirely public money, to research putting windmills in the middle of Lake Michigan. But we're finding out now that much of the information that was provided as proof that global warming is in fact coming. It's a multiple thought that there in fact is global warming, and then it is in fact caused by human activity, and that activity, if we stop doing it, will be able to stop this global warming. But much of that, the research has now been turned out to be proven questionable. Some of it has been turned out to be proven flat out forged.
Well, I'm not a real expert on all of the global warming stuff. I covered this from the political side. And I know perfectly well from having watched it the extent to which misrepresentations were put out, et cetera, et cetera. And basically what's happened is, to me, having just a minor amount of research that I've done on it, the context is completely missing. One of the biggest things that can happen, as far as I'm concerned, at turning around the mindset here, is simply have people talk about the bigger issue of the history of climate change on the Earth. In order to push this idea of man-made climate change, you kind of have to keep your audience viewing just like the last 100 or 150 years. You can't talk about the bigger context, because once you start seeing how much climate changes as a regular part of the pattern on Earth and has perpetually for 4.5 billion years, suddenly you get a different view.
Now, are you talking primarily about the coincidence, I guess you'd have to call it, between this recent rise in global temperatures with the rise in CO2?
I'm talking about the fact that the rise in temperatures has been going on for 600 years, and it's coming up. We're coming up out of the Little Ice Age. So the temperature was rising out of a low point, and you don't even get that context from the people who are pushing this stuff. They don't want you to know that, hey, in the 14th century, the temperature plunged. It's not a theory. It's not some right-wing information put out there. It's scientific. It changed our culture. People moved indoors, et cetera, et cetera. You can get on the internet and you can see stories or the television shows from PBS in the 70s that openly discuss what happened when the Little Ice Age hit.
Well,
and yet we don't get that perspective when they talk about the temperatures rising somewhat.
Well, we know that the same folks, in many cases the exact same people, but certainly some of the same media, be it Time Magazine or Newsweek or New York Times or some of the television networks, they were telling us with great seriousness and emotion that an ice age was coming down the pike because of human activity back in the 70s is when they were pushing that concept.
Yes, that's what something I wanted to bring up is that Earth Day was started not with global warming, but at a time when they were afraid of a global winter.
Yeah.
And Earth Day is much broader than global warming.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is, and certainly I saw that in Muskegon Heights just over the last week. One of the elementary schools went out and did some cleanup, and kudos to them. That type of thing is always a good idea. I know that back in the 70s, pollution was a huge issue. Certainly in the 50s and the 60s, it was a very, very big issue. Lakes, I remember, those of you who are old enough to remember that the lake, Lake Erie, where Cleveland's on, caught fire, or at least the river. It was a river in Cleveland. Yeah, it was a river in Cleveland. And we know that we had serious situations all over the Great Lakes. I know in the East Coast, the beach, I grew up in the New York area, and in Long Island Sound, the beaches were closed because of pollution. And, in fact, air pollution was terrible. We don't have that to any great extent here in the United States and in capitalistic countries. You do still have it in socialistic and communistic countries.
Mm. Well, there's an irony there, too, because I would argue that politically, we had pretty well conquered most socialistic rhetoric, particularly with what happened in the Soviet Union, which was a 70-year experiment that everyone knows how it came out.
Especially environmentally.
And then I believe that the environmental movement here is what has kept that alive. It was their ace in the hole from a perspective of propaganda that basically it ends up being an excuse to do a lot of things that just plain economically you would not do. But, hey, the Earth's in the balance, so it's an excuse to do anything, whether it makes economic sense or not.
Well, go ahead, Andy.
I believe that an awful lot of the environmental activism is just people trying to control other people's lives.
Well, it's interesting that this is not a new concept. I don't know if this is coincidental or not, but it is today is the celebration, if you will, of the birthday of Vladimir Lenin, who, of course, was the Russian leader back in the Bolshevik Revolution and the first head of the Soviet state. They were quite, actually, interestingly, very interested in the environment. And next week, a week from today, actually on Sunday, will be the celebration, I'm sure among some, of the marriage between another huge eco-warrior and a person who utilized the love of the earth to grand success in terms of motivating people, and that's the wonderful Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun were married next week. So you have two groups. Well,
headlines. Jim Riley says that Adolf Hitler is wonderful.
There we go. There we go. Well, I said some folks might agree with that, but the facts are that both the Nazis and the fascists and the communists have very successfully used this type of fear of environmental collapse and love of Mother Earth to expand their control and power over the citizens, over those of whom they reigned.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know how much you connect Hitler with it. I know that he didn't you pretty much got shot if you smoked in his presence. But the one aspect I would say that is similar is this idea of the big lie. If you're going to lie, lie big. And I think that's a lot of what the man-made climate change is. I think there are tons of very sincere people who believe in it. I just happen to believe that the folks on top of it who are manipulating it, I question very much whether they believe in it at all. But it's the kind of a thing where the aspects of the big lie have been well written. How difficult it is to come back and answer it. I just did an editorial for Pioneer Group, which I do weekly, where I interviewed Mother Earth. And I think it was a pretty good interview, and it was the whole idea of getting the bigger perspective. We're actually cooling off. We've been cooling off the last 3,000 years, and the current temperature rise is a tiny temperature bump within a bigger picture of cooling. But I can't, in the scope of one article, counteract the big lie, because the next part, which is too long for the article, is to talk about these polls that claim all these climatologists believe in it. And that's the problem with the big lie. You can't take it apart that easily, and that's why that kind of thing is so difficult to deal with.
I think there's another issue here that that for some reason the environmentalists have overlooked, and that is that the fact that even if the Earth is warming and even if man is contributing to it, that doesn't mean we should stop it, because it might be too expensive in terms of human grief if we tried to stop it. How many millions of Africans are going to die if we deny them the wealth that comes from economic growth? And you can't.
Well, that is the other side of the equation, that if in fact it's true, and if in fact we are causing it, is it in fact bad? It certainly, change almost always necessitates, adjustment. Sometimes change, in most cases, change has good and not so good components.
I want you to think of New York City before sewage. Sewer systems. We had all those people there, and the more and more people and the more human waste was going on, it was going to be a terrible economic disaster, environmental disaster. And if today's environmentalists were there back in New York City, they would not create sewers to adapt to the problem. They would just disperse people all over the country and close down New York City.
That's the big word right there, adapt. That's what I think that we've been doing, is adapting. We can always adapt to whatever the situation is.
Human innovation has allowed that adaptation, but what Andy said I think is really interesting, because you're right. You can adapt in a variety of ways. One way is to innovate and say, wait a minute, human beings are not the evil, but in fact we have a situation, a problem that we need to fix, and we have the tools to do it. Or you can say human beings are evil, we're not going to take advantage of the options that are out there, like nuclear power, for instance, and in fact we are going to go another way, which would be dissipate, or perhaps, as they're doing in China, just reduce the number of human beings. I do know that one of the great issues of the day, just prior to the entry into the United States of mass-produced automobiles, was the question of what to do with all the horse poop. Yes. That was a very, very big issue, and you can be sure that when automobiles became prevalent in this country, had there been a horse poop picker-upper union, that there would have been sit-down strikes and all sorts of sob stories from Matt Lauer on television talking about all the horse poop picker-uppers' families who would have been out of jobs and how awful it would have been for them.
I think there's a couple aspects to that. First is this whole idea that if this is true, I don't for one second believe it is, but we're doomed if what they're saying is true, because no matter what we do in this country, and it's kind of hilarious to watch, the footprint, the carbon footprint that China's going to have in just 20 years is going to dwarf the whole world's. And that's even with what they're trying to do, which they're trying basically to increase their energy output. And frankly, what makes most sense there happens to be hydro and nuclear, which just happens to be green. So they go, hey, let's shut up some of these Western countries by pointing out that what we're doing is green. But even with that, it's going to be so huge that what we do is insignificant. And I also always laugh when we cheer, or the environmentalists cheer, a plant closing in the United States where something would be done or built in a more environmental way, and the thing then opens in China where it's built in a less environmental way. I don't see how the Earth benefits from that. It's kind of a really crazy concept. And then the other side of it, as you were saying, is what do we give up if we fought this thing? Well, we've already seen where the environmentalists are. They don't let us use DDT, even though it's now considered safe. The problem with it wasn't using it. It was using too little or using too much of it. And we've gone ahead and had diseases come back in Africa and so on, and people have died because we don't use it. So the answer to that is, yeah, they basically said go ahead and let more humans die rather than break into their philosophy.
Well, you know, there have been studies out now. There's an article in the journal Nature, which said that published retractions by scientists in their journals have increased tenfold over the past decade, while the number of published papers has just increased by 44%. So what we're having is all sorts of scientists who are coming out with information that a tenfold increase in retractions of that information, and there is some skepticism. Jack, can you hold on after break and come on back?
Sure.
Appreciate it very much. We will be back, folks, on EyeOnMuskegon celebrating Earth Day, that wonderful religious holiday of government and supporters of big government.
Oh, don't you love me sometime?
Holland Hydroponic Outlet has it all. Complete light systems, hydroponics, ventilation, nutrients, and soil. In Holland, Grand Haven, and South Haven. Check out Torched Glass Art Studio next to the Holland store, creating one-of-a-kind glass pipes.
I hate funerals. I wish I could be listening to my favorite radio station instead.
You can! With iHeartRadio, you can listen to your favorite radio station anywhere.
iHeartRadio lets you listen to over 750 live radio stations across the country. You can also create commercial-free custom playlists. Just type in a song, and iHeartRadio does the rest. Absolutely free.
iHeartRadio, when you're dying for entertainment. Get it?
Listen to iHeartRadio on Xbox today to enter for a chance to win a trip for two to the iHeartRadio Ultimate Pool Party in Miami. And this weekend, enjoy access to all of the entertainment of Xbox Live Gold for free.
It's about your life and your money. It's the Dave Ramsey Show.
Jimmy Eldine, not the Sausage King, the king of saving money. He never made six figures, didn't even make close to six figures in salary. He worked a regular job at Phillips Petroleum for 33 years and died with more than $2 million in the bank, having never made more than $100,000 in 1 year. How'd he do that? Like most millionaires, he learned to live on less than he made.
Catch Dave weekday afternoons from 2 till 5 on News Talk 1090 WKBZ.
I knew I was stuck at this kid's house for the night, but those guys snuck up on me to try and pull the hand in a bowl of warm water trick. Well, that was enough for me. I went downstairs to sleep in the basement, even though it was pitch black. I left my sleeping bag upstairs, and that was a mistake, because it was freezing. I think it was probably the longest night of my life. To read more about the sleepover, check out Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Last Straw by Jeff Kinney. Explore new worlds and check out more cool books at your local library, and visit read.gov. Brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
Visit local sites around, local radio and television, reaching more people, touching more lives.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Our greatest primary task is to put people to work. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
And we, the Fearless, are back at EyeOnMuskegon with Professor Andy Fink, the legendary Oscar.
I want to tell your listeners that I am not a professor. I'm an adjunct teacher.
Well, there we go. Well, you know, in our little the three-person world here in the studio, you're a professor.
Hey, I'm a legendary, so come on.
There we go.
I could be legendary.
Okay, well, maybe we'll move to that. And we also have the superstar of the entire Mackinac Center, Jack Spencer, with us. And thanks so much for being with us, Jack.
It's good being here.
And as you said, the big lie is very potent, powerful weapon, and fear does motivate folks. And you and I had a little conversation earlier in the week, and you mentioned another radio show whose name the gentleman's name escapes me, but it's a Detroit-based show, and he had interviewed a writer and environmentalist, and perhaps you want to talk a little bit about that in a sec. But he had talked about the facts that Germany, for instance, where solar subsidies have been huge, are now being pulled back because they're finding out that they don't work. And we know in Spain, we're one of the bigger countries that, in terms of supporting wind energy, are pulling back subsidies again because they've run out of money, and in fact they are not fiscally sustainable. Sustainability, of course, is a term that the left loves to use when they talk about the environment. But I think perhaps we ought to talk a little bit about the fear and the reality of what happens if the enviro left does succeed, because we are seeing, of course, Greece and Europe falling down. We are seeing China, where they're building a new coal-fired plant, I believe one a week, and in fact, I think in 1 year's worth or 2 years' worth of Chinese new development would wipe out 100% of all of the West's Kyoto Treaty efforts, if in fact the West did adopt the Kyoto Treaty. So it would be done in a year or two. So worldwide, this disaster is coming, according to the left, and it's bankrupting us at the same time.
Okay, I agree with you, but I don't want to suggest that China is at all at fault for this. Their carbon footprint per capita is still enormously less than Western world's. I knew you weren't saying
we
that.
We can have a show on who's a bad guy, but the facts are that if in fact we do live, as Jack suggested, we do live in a world environment. And anyway, Jack, it was the Brick House, or who's the gentleman who had the radio show in Detroit?
You're talking about Frank Beckman?
Frank Beckman. There we go. Did you want to maybe comment a little bit about that?
Well, it's a fellow. His name is Bjorn Lomborg.
Okay. And he's an environmentalist.
B-O-R-G.
Okay.
He's from Denmark, and his argument is is that he happens to be someone who believes in man-made climate change, but his argument is that the stuff they're doing isn't going to do anything about it, isn't going to fix it, and the stuff they're doing is just just is not going to help. I think on the show he was talking about for the next 100 years, if they did all these things, it would delay the climate change for something like 23 minutes or something.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. Yes, I did listen to the show. Well, and what his point was, and it was only a few minutes on the radio, but his point essentially was that we may have very significant issues with the environment, and certainly other issues that are important. And if we divert all of these billions and trillions of dollars today into efforts that the people who've been doing them now are realizing don't work, like the Germans with the solar and the Spanish with the global with the wind farms and the like. We're going to be out of money, and we will not be doing the research necessary that could, maybe it's fusion, maybe it's there was something else about the growing oil in the oceans of some sort. There are all sorts of interesting new concepts. We're not spending the money on those because we're pouring money into companies like Solandra and other, in our country, very politically well-connected companies that surprisingly are bellying up very quickly.
I think that Lomberg's point is somewhat what Oscar and I were saying, is that instead of trying to stop what we're doing, we should try to adapt to the results of what we're doing.
All right, I'll go along with that, but that's not really, we're not doing any adapting.
Not a bit.
Well, I would argue again that I just think if what they're saying, what the environmental extremists are saying is true, I don't think there is any changing it or is any fixing it. And China is so big that, frankly, the per capita footprint obviously gets lost. We forget what's China, a third of the Earth's population or more now.
And, of course, India's right next door.
Right.
Of course, they own most of us, too.
Right. So there's that aspect of it also. But it's totally political. Politics have taken this thing completely over. The idea you can make a buck for doing something that otherwise would be unsuccessful, but if you get government to say you've got to do it, and people have to buy it, which is what is happening with things like windmills and so on and so forth, being a certain percentage of where the energy comes from. Well, you're immediately going to get a bunch of what I call scam artists coming in and figuring out a way to get their company lined up.
Yeah, and that's the new term, of course, is the public-private partnership, and I see that the Grand Valley State University, which has a couple of locations here in Muskegon, is talking about their new research with a company whose name I don't recall, but for windmills, wind generation in the center of Lake Michigan, and they come up with bogus, and I truly mean this, bogus mathematics. One of the things that was brought up with the $10 million that was spent cleaning up Muskegon Lake, and in fact, certain parts of it are cleaned up and very nice. The ultimate question is it really worth the $10 million? And I would argue absolutely not. It could have been done a lot cheaper and probably better in another way. But one of the arguments that they came up with was that there's a $6 payback for every dollar spent in environmental cleanup on the lakes. In other words, one of the head of the economics department at Grand Valley came out and said that there will be $60 million worth of economic benefit to Muskegon County because of this environmental cleanup. Well, I did a little research, and I even contacted the economist, and he sent me his research, and that's in quotes. What they came out with, among other things, was they said that real estate around the lake itself, not on the lake, interestingly, but real estate nearby, would increase in value because of a cleaner lake. And it had absolutely no data to support that, other than the fact that certainly in the 80s and 90s and a good portion of the 2000s, real estate values went up everywhere. We know, of course, real estate values have not gone up since this $10 million has been popped in. But they come up with these phony baloney headlines, $6 payoff for each dollar invested, $60 million economic benefit to the county. So in addition to the fear, they're saying, wait a minute, this is very logical and fiscally sustainable and a very wise decision to make. How do you fight that?
Well, first of all, you have to have a little education because, I mean, these are tricks. These are just political tricks, frankly, that have been used for decades. They just are being applied to environmental stuff. And I think you just have to go back again on their track record of these kinds of things, and we saw it under Jennifer Granholm, of these numbers just being pulled out of the air and thrown out there. And you have to, I think the only way you can do it is show these people's batting average and show the batting average of these kinds of things. It's been going on for ages. I do think a lot of the PR stuff is stuff you could probably go back and find were applied to other things before the environmental people even came along. There's a technical term for it. It's called just plain lying. And politicians do that. They've done it for a long time. And frankly, it's amazing for someone who's followed this politically as long as I have to believe anybody buys this, but you have to realize the average person out there is busy living their lives, and they may still fall for it.
Well, and when you hear, little quick $6 payoff for each dollar spent, do we have a $60 million benefit, or we in fact can have clean wind power, and plus it will create jobs until the Solandras and the other companies belly up. And of course, now we're building all over West Michigan, and I don't know if they are out there in the center of the state where you are, but building these battery factories for all the Volts that will be Chevy Volts and other electric cars that are going to be sold. Apparently,
that I can't afford.
Well, that no one can really afford it. And Oscar, you brought up a great point last week about the fact that here we have these electric cars that, in theory, would be much more efficient. They'd be the Volkswagens of today's world, the people car. Yeah. But in fact, the only people who can afford them are people, number one, who already have an additional car, because you could never have a Chevy Volt or similar car as your sole vehicle. And of course, the cost is so much. And remember, these are costs not including the massive government subsidies to bring them in, and the subsidies for the battery plants. And of course, what's in those batteries that at some point is going to be thrown into the ground in some manner, or maybe shot up into space.
Yeah. Well, I saw just the other day. I saw a BMW too, the mini BMW that's supposed to have big savings. It gets like 32 miles to the gallon. My little Chevy does that. Come on, 32 miles to the gallon, big deal.
Yeah, but it's not a BMW.
Well, that's true. It's not a BMW.
So why aren't you buying one?
I just can't afford it. I'm sorry.
You hate Germans. That's the key. You hate you're a hater. Well, Jack, what's going on in Michigan? Anything exciting? I know we see things out here. Anything coming down the pike that you're aware of? Where our governor seems to be certainly he's a businessman. He seems to be a little more rational. Our current governor a little more rational than what we've seen in past years.
Well, going along with what you were just talking about as far as these claims and so on, one of the biggest things I've cheered this governor for was he stopped having his MEDC use these spin-off job claims, which was one of, if you recall, Jennifer Granholm's big things on these green projects was all these jobs that they were going to create. And on paper, she created enough jobs to have everybody working on the entire East Coast while we were actually losing jobs. So I think that's been a plus. But the big thing is there is a new attempt to get a ballot proposal on the ballot in November, and the proposal would increase the percentage or quota, whatever you want to call it, of Michigan's energy that has to be produced through renewables. We're talking solar, we're talking wind.
Well, Jack, this is an interesting thing to me because one of the arguments that I've heard from people who support more renewable energy is that, in fact, all of the electric companies and the energy power companies are all behind this. So if it's such a bad idea and if it's going to be so expensive, these companies wouldn't be for it, right?
Well, first of all, like any other business, the company doesn't pay for it. The company sends that extra cost on through one way or another to the customer.
You mean the electric company, let's say, in this
the
this
utility.
instance. Okay.
And just like, so to a certain extent, they're going to be non-affected by it. Now, I think they are in these cases. This would be jumping it to 25% by 2025, which is only 13 years from now.
What is the current requirement?
The current is to get 10% by 2015.
And how is the state of Michigan? How are our utilities coming along to get that? Because that's only 3 years from now.
Well, they're going to reach it, as we've known from watching other states and watching what happens in Washington. A lot of times it's what you say you can hit on paper and how you define renewable. So there's that game being played all the time. There is a place on your energy bill that says how much you're paying supposedly for this extra cost of the green stuff, and it's not real expensive. The problem is, of course, if it still costs more, that just goes into the rest of the bill and you don't see it.
Well, it also goes into the bill of the corporations that might be interested in hiring people or making decisions about where they're going to locate their next company or factory. If in fact we have to go from a 10%, which we now know to be 10% renewable energy, just means it's going to cost more. We go to 25%. If you're a major company, are you really not going to factor that in when you're making determinations of expanding or moving to Michigan?
The simple bottom line is that's the way it is with all this environmental stuff. It's just, it makes you do things that you would never do economically and that simply don't make any sense economically, except you can make the argument for it because the Earth's in the balance and you're doing something on the environmental side without government making you have a certain percentage. These things, the battery things, the windmill things, simply would have to either work economically or not. Electric cars would either have to sell or not, and then you let the regular market make the decision. The environmental stuff takes us out of the normal market and has government making a call saying you've got to do these things whether they make sense or not.
Jack, on this really depressing note, thank you for enlightening us. Very much appreciate your expertise and all your homework on this. Have a great Sunday, a great Earth Day celebration, and we'll hopefully have you back soon.
And thank you for all that the Mackinac Center does for the state of Michigan.
Absolutely.
Dave, thank you very much for having me on.
We'll be right back.
The Talkin' Muskegon program can...
A message from Orlando Bloom, Neo, Joel Madden, Lawrence Fishburne, Taya Leone, and Nicole Ritchie.
They do not have to die, but they do.
24,000 children every day.
They die for reasons we can prevent.
Like not getting enough food or medicine or clean, safe water to drink.
24,000 children every day.
But we are gaining ground. A generation ago, twice as many children were dying.
Still, 24,000 every day?
They don't have to die.
They do not have to die.
They don't have to die, but they do.
They die because they are young and vulnerable.
They die because through no fault of their own, they are poor.
24,000 children.
24,000 children.
24,000 children every day.
My name is Taya Leone, and I believe.
My name is Joel Madden.
My name is Nicole Ritchie.
My name is Neo, and I believe.
My name is Lawrence Fishburne.
My name is Orlando Bloom, and I believe that number should be 0. Believe in 0.
Join the effort. Visit unicefusa.org.
Army Specialist Andrew Pike became paralyzed while serving in Iraq. Andrew and his father explained the impact of his injury.
At first, you think, I want my son to be able to walk.
My injury was a gunshot wound to the left abdomen from a sniper. My first contact with paralyzed veterans was in Walter Reed.
Paralyzed Veterans National Service officers work with our injured veterans to ensure they get the benefits they have earned. NSO Michael Killen explains.
We try to reassure them what benefits are out there, and we try to educate them and take some of that stress away from them.
Paralyzed Veterans of America helped Andy get the auto, housing, and vocational benefits he earned.
PVA did a fantastic job making sure that he got those benefits on a timely basis.
Right now I'm going back to school to earn a degree, and I'm just spending time with my wife and child.
To learn how you can help our paralyzed veterans, visit pva.org. A public service message from Paralyzed Veterans of America.
The full moon lights the silver rails winding around dark mountains and over steep gorges of jagged rock and one freezing cold rushing black mountain river. I wish there was enough time to describe all of the funny twists and turns that led up to now, but there isn't enough time because there's a ticking clock and the two passengers we care most about don't know anything about it. To see what happens next, visit read.gov to read The Exquisite Corpse, a riveting adventure pieced together by John Sheska, Shannon Hale, Daniel Handler, and other popular authors. Explore new worlds. Read. Brought to you by the Library of Congress and the Ad Council.
I can solve difficult problems for a Fortune 500 company.
I can run a successful business.
I can manage your home improvements.
I can publicize your message.
I can motivate your audience.
I can put my military experience to work for your company.
I can teach your children.
I can boost your bottom line.
I can add value to your workplace. I could be a loyal and productive employee.
But I can't put my skills to work for your organization
if I'm not given the opportunity.
If you don't recognize my talents and ability.
If you don't hire me. If you don't have an open mind and a workplace that's open to everyone.
If you don't realize that America works best when everybody works.
What can you do? What can you do?
What can you do?
You can remember that it worked.
It's what people can do.
It's what people can do that matters.
Nearly 50 million Americans have disabilities. Capitalize on their talents with employment practices that benefit everyone. Learn more at whatcanyoudocampaign.org.
Well, you dadgum government, you sorry so-and-sos. You got your damn hands in every pocket of my clothes. Well, you dadgum.
Okay, they got the dadgum government with their hands in every pocket of our clothes, and also they got their hands in the pockets of our electric company and our gas companies and our petroleum companies and the clean coal companies and everybody else. And the fact that the government has their hands in the pockets of those people who provide us with the energy simply means, as Jack Spencer said, simply means that those companies are going to have to raise their prices, which, of course, then we will ultimately have to pay. And in many cases, the ultimate isn't too far down the road. I know that in Europe they're paying, according to this Bjorn Lomborg, or whatever his name was, that they're paying 3 times the cost that we are paying here in the United States for electricity. We all know that if you've ever traveled to a foreign country, even Canada, that they pay significantly more for electric than we pay. And one thing I noticed yesterday, I was in Myers. I was picking up some food like people do on Saturdays, and I was looking at, actually, there was an ad for chicken breasts on sale for $6.99 a pack. Now, it wasn't that long ago that chicken breasts, and by not that long ago, I mean within the last couple of years, you could buy chicken breasts for, I don't know, $1.99 or $2.99 a pound. $6.99 was a price that the Myers felt worthy of putting on as a sale in today's flyer.
That wasn't per pound.
That could have been something else. Maybe I read it incorrectly.
Yeah, really. Yeah,
You must have read it incorrectly.
You must have went to either that or something just marked it wrong or something.
No, you could. I'm sure you could find a market in New York City or Chicago that charges.
Well, it's in Sunday's flyer, so we can all double check that. But the reason it struck me was because I was just looking at everything else that I buy, and I was really shocked.
Everything is higher.
And how much more the prices on literally everything have gone up that I purchase anyway, and much of this can be laid at the feet of the ethanol. Remember how ethanol was going to free us from foreign oil, and how ethanol was the new clean. And it wasn't long ago, by the way, that these same people who are telling us the end is near were telling us that the ethanol was the answer. And one of the downsides to growing clean energy, and that's in quotes, is that it takes more energy to grow the corn and turn it into ethanol than in fact the ethanol in fact produces. And just like these solar panels in Germany and other countries.
And just like I said, too, it was the mistake of the 70s. Why did they bring it back now? I didn't get it.
Well, that's right. And of course, Jimmy Carter did so well with his, what was it? It was the oil shale, which interestingly was a wonderful idea, but it was before its time. We know now in Canada they're using oil sands and oil shale to create petroleum, and then they're doing it not just economically; they're able to make a profit on it. But when Jimmy Carter did it back in the 70s, government was forcing it. It was totally uneconomical. It bankrupted many companies and, of course, poured billions and billions of dollars into a boondoggle. That it was in part, I think, the reason that Jimmy Carter is now known as a failed president. Perhaps President Obama may suffer that same fate. But I just, when we look at the cost down the road, and as you just said, they've already tried this before and it didn't work. Yeah. Well, sometimes it may work again. Well, sometimes it may work again if in fact the technology has changed. But we have been given a gift, whether you are a believer in God or you're a believer in Mother Earth or whatever. But we've been given a gift of fossil fuels. These are natural resources. You know, remember, don't you love how the left has taken the term petroleum and coal and natural gas, and they're now fossil fuels. They're probably even a nastier, more insidious sounding name. But the reality is those are natural resources, and those resources, especially with current technology, can be utilized with very, very little effect, with the exception of carbon dioxide, which was only called a bad gas by a political appointee, not by any science. And that's the bridge. Fossil fuels, natural resources are the bridge between what we currently have today and whatever lies in the future in terms of the ability of human beings to create power for their societies and economies.
And wealth for all, including the poorest.
Thank you.
How many natural resources are we wasting right now as far as all the dumps that they're just burning the gas off of right now?
Well, that's a really good point, because if you look at and Muskegon, by the way, is way ahead on that. We are reclaiming quite a bit of the natural gas in the Muskegon County waste disposal area. But yes, there's a tremendous amount of that. But actually, it's all a drop in the bucket compared to the greenhouse gases that are pushed into the air purely by decomposition, by the flatulence of insects and virtually every other animal on the face of the earth. So if you think of putting your finger in a dike to try to stop the collapse of the dike, think of the dike as about 1 million times bigger and your finger 1 million times smaller, because little of this is going to change what really matters, except it may turn us into Greece, or even worse, it may turn us into the Soviet Union, and we saw how that worked out for those folks.
You've been talking about the religion of environmentalism all morning, and it occurred to me that some of your listeners may be confused by why you would call it a religion.
Well, can you perhaps enlighten them?
Well, I did do some research on what a definition of a religion is, and one of the things that it came up with was a system of beliefs held to with ardor and faith. Well, that certainly fits environmentalism.
Okay, well, let's just touch on that for a sec. Okay, in other words, these are a series of beliefs that are fervently, deeply believed. I mean, these people aren't phonies.
Right.
But and they know for a fact that that belief is real. Okay.
But I came up with two definitions of my own, or one definition of my own with a subpart. A system of beliefs based on faith, not provable or disprovable by science.
Okay, and that's, of course, that is a great definition of religion, because whether you are a fervent believer, let's just say in Catholicism or Christianity, you can't really prove many of the tenets. And if you are a fervent atheist, you really can't disprove that you can't. There's no proof there is no God.
And a subpart to that is a system that punishes those who do not accept the faith-driven beliefs. In other words, a system that identifies heresy.
Okay, and identifies and has punishment.
Heresy.
Because, of course, if you don't believe in many religions, they at least tell you that you're going to hell. In some other religions, they, in fact, make it easy for you to go, at least out of life. They kill you.
And if you are against, or if you don't believe in global warming, you don't get published.
Well, if you're a scientist, and that's a very good point as to why so many, quote, experts are believers of global warming, but the reality is that if you are a denier on many college campuses, you're not going to get published. You're probably not going to get a job, and of course, you're not going to get federal funding. Well, we've had our day to celebrate what has become a national celebration of our government religion, Earth Day.
And by the way, I was telling you too that in the 80s we had it was maybe about recycling, and we had recycled shoes with tires and stuff like that. I remember we had recycled socks made out of pop bottles.
Okay,
those were not comfy.
Well, let me tell you this just shortly. You can Google this yourself. Recycling really came about in the 70s as a result of the New York mafia, the mobs that controlled the trash pickup in New York City. Wow. They were so successful in totally controlling all the pickup, their growth was stagnant. They could only charge so much. And the mob actually came up with the concept of recycling, sold it to the city of New York, and from there it came about. Just put in recycling, New York City, trash pickup, mobs, mafia. It's all there. Anyway, I learned a lot today, and this has been a great show. Thank you guys, both of you, for being here. And,
happy to be here.
Again, don't forget, I am on the Talkin' Muskegon show on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from 9 to 10, or I'm sorry, from 8 to 9. And next Sunday, we're not exactly sure what we're going to be doing. We'll probably be talking. Hopefully, we're going to get a follow-up on our lawsuit against the county. And we'll keep you in tune. Don't forget, we're on TV 38 Monday nights, 8 o'clock to 9:30. It's TV, baby. That's Oscar doing it. And, folks, next week, we'll keep the eye on you, Muskegon.
Oh, don't you know? Love him sometime. Yeah, boy. Oh, don't you love me sometime?
Golfer spring is here, so it's time for the trade-in sale at Maple Hill. Get great deals like Nike Mach Speed HL drivers for $77.77.
This is Mike McCready, Pearl Jam's lead guitarist. For the last 24 years, I've been living with Crohn's disease, a chronic and often painful digestive disease. Luckily, I have my disease under control. But so many of the 1.4 million Americans living with Crohn's and a similar disease called ulcerative colitis live day to day not knowing when their disease will strike next. You can help by joining one of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation's 130 Take Steps walks. Sign up today at cctakesteps.org. Take a step, register today.
They don't have to die, but they do. 24,000 children every day. My name is Orlando Bloom, and I believe that number should be 0. Believe in 0. Join the effort. Visit unicefusa.org.
The Talk of Muskegon is News Talk 1090, WKBC Muskegon, and heard 24 hours a day on WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
This is WKBZ Muskegon and WOOD HD2 Muskegon.
Good morning. Welcome to the Polka Melodies. It's Sunday,